Hello and welcome. This is David Weishart, and this video is going to be a case study in the character secrets of Witness. The character secrets of Witness. Witness is the 1985 movie. Now, in the ebook, How to Write Great Characters, and also in the class and the other videos, I introduced the 9 personality types and the step-by-step guide to how each character type moves along their character arc. Now we're going to look at the characters and the character arc in the 1985 movie Witness, and the character arc of John Book, played by Harrison Ford. Now, I'm going to be going into some spoilers here, so if you haven't seen Witness yet, you might want to check it out first. You can certainly watch this or listen to the audio and watch the movie afterwards with these notes in mind, with these ideas in mind. But you might want to, if you haven't seen the movie, just watch it once for enjoyment. It is a very good movie. The screenplay won an Oscar. The Oscar-winning screenplay was written by Earl W. Wallace and William Kelly. Now, a little bit of history here that I thought was kind of interesting. Although Witness won for Best Original Screenplay, the writers had previously written several scripts based on the same concept. So first there was an unproduced TV script. It was a TV movie scripted by Kelly, William Kelly, and I believe the title was Jedediah, but that was unproduced. Then there was an unproduced episode of Gunsmoke. Wallace and Kelly, the co-writers, were both staff writers on the show. And then they moved. I think the script did not get produced because it was bought for the show, but then the show was canceled. The show ended its run before this episode could air. So originally it was a TV movie that didn't get made called Jedediah. Then it was bought for Gunsmoke, reworked, of course. Didn't get made as a Gunsmoke episode. And then both Wallace and Kelly ended up working on another TV show called How the West Was Won. Again, another Western, like Gunsmoke. Different than Gunsmoke, but another Western television show. And they did an episode, actually a series of episodes, or sort of an arc, so a plot line that ran through several episodes about the Simonites. And the Simonites episode of How the West Was Won. And then, so that actually did air and was produced, and I think it was this story, I think it was a couple episodes of How the West Was Won, incorporated this concept. And then it was finally incorporated into a feature film script called Witness, which is the subject of this lesson and this case study. Now, one of the interesting things about this collaboration, it's always interesting to find out how two writers collaborate. And apparently on this script for the Witness film screenplay, Wallace wrote the Philadelphia police scenes and Kelly wrote the Amish scenes. So there are two different worlds in this movie, and one writer focused on one of those worlds, the contemporary cop story, and the other writer focused on the fish out of water, the modern cop in the old style culture of the Amish in Philadelphia. So that's a kind of an interesting way to break up the writing task for that script. I found a quote in Sid Field's book, Selling a Screenplay, a book by Sid Field. He quotes Wallace, and the quote says, Wallace says, when you're talking about the classic Western gunfighter, you're talking about a man with a profound set of ethics, of right or wrong, I perceived the John Book character as experiencing moral outrage. Nothing's going to stand in his way. He is ultimately the moral man. Okay, so I found that quote very interesting. That was from one of the writers, from Earl W. Wallace. So talking about John Book as being a moral man, he has a profound set of ethics, of right and wrong. And indeed, the movie Witness, John Book is a moral man, and he's obsessed with issues of right and wrong. So if you've had a chance to go over the Enneagram system and the character secrets as I teach them, you will recognize immediately which of the character types this is. John Book, a moral man obsessed with issues of right and wrong. It could only be a type 1 reformer. So what we're dealing with here as the protagonist of the story is a reformer type. Okay, a little bit of review. What do we know about a type 1 reformer? Well, they fear being evil or corrupt. That's their secret. Their character secret is the fear of being evil or possibly corrupt, the fear of being bad. So they're trying to be good. They're trying to prove to the world and to themselves that they are good. And so one of the things they tend to be perfectionists. They want to be right. And they're critical and judgmental. Now they're very self-critical, and but it often comes out as criticism of other people. So they tend to project that out and are judgmental of other people and other systems of the environment, of things outside of them. They like to finish what they start. They do things by the book. So John Book is a very interesting name for that character. Very often, as a screenwriter or a writer of a novel or any kind of story, you're going to want to name your characters something that might indicate some of their characteristics. You don't always want to be too on the nose. Charles Dickens was often criticized for being too on the nose with his names, but a name like John Book, I think, is a nice touch here. He is by the book, and that is represented in his name. So words have meaning, names have meaning, and I think actually, people's names can actually influence who they are. I know my last name is Wiseheart, and I've always tried to live up to that, having a wise heart, although heart is H-A-R-T, and it comes from the word for strength, so it means wise and strong. But that it's kind of the mantra. Everybody, they call me by that name, and I call myself by that name. I hear it a lot, and it's in my head. And because it is my name, I tend to over-identify with it. And I think other people do this as well. So John Book, by the book character. And so I think it's okay to name your characters something that is indicative of who they are, even going so far as to be too on the nose. You can always dial it back a little bit if people complain. Okay, so what else about the reformer? They are efficient, organized, and self-disciplined. They can become self-righteous. So this is one of the ways we know that we're dealing with a reformer, if we see somebody who's self-righteous. And John Book certainly qualifies in this movie, as is brought up several times in the movie. And they often work in law enforcement. So this is a type of career that a reformer might gravitate to. And why would that be? Well, they're trying to fix things. They're trying to make things right. So issues of justice. They are trying to prove to themselves and to others that they are good. So putting themselves on the side of the law and against evil and corruption as a career is certainly an outward expression of what's going on inside of them and the fears that they're dealing with. So all of these sort of interesting. So putting a reformer in a law enforcement job in a story, and obviously police and cop stories are perennially popular, and you get a lot of story material out of that environment of law enforcement. Okay, so for all these reasons, John Book, as we will see, is an excellent example of this type, of the reformer type. His character arc, now we'll go through all of the 6 steps in the character reaction pattern for a type 1 reformer. Okay, so this 6-step pattern of the reformer, when confronted by a major life stress, characters will tend to act out as a different type than their core character type. Now, they're always going to remain, they're going to be their core character type throughout. That doesn't really change, but they will change their behaviors, and they will act out as other characters. And this gives them an opportunity to behave out of their normal comfort zone and learn new things about themselves. So there are aspects of their own personality, there are aspects of being a human being that the character is suppressing because they are expressing a particular character type. And through their arc, they're going to be able to express other parts of themselves, and for an audience, that's a chance for us to see them as a three-dimensional person as they react to new stresses in new ways. Now, this happens to be a predictable and repeatable pattern, and for reformer, the pattern has 6 steps. It starts at type 1 and returns to type 1, but at a higher or lower level of morality. So stories tend to be moral tales. They have a moral premise that is either going to be proved or disproved by how the character behaves and what kind of choice the character makes at the end of the story. So you can see this pattern when you're looking at the Enneagram. You follow the arrows starting starting and ending at type 1, the reformer. So looking at the pattern, we see that we follow the arrows, and we see that the pattern is from 1, the reformer, to type 4, the artist, to type 2, the helper, to type 8, the leader, and then to type 5, the observer, type 7, the adventurer, and then back to type 1. Now, there is a reason for this. So the reason that the reformer under stress and people in real life under stress, a reformer is going to go to an artist, is because the reformer is actually repressing the artist within them. The artist has a lot of characteristics that are kind of opposite of the way the reformer normally acts, and they will act out emotionally and in a sort of suffering way when they're under stress. That's what they will feel, and then there are also positive sides to each of these types. So the artist will tend to behave certain ways. So you might get a beat in a story where there's a playfulness or a disguise or some kind of maybe deception or some kind of creative act happens here. Some creative thinking, creative problem solving. Creativity can be a beat here, because remember, the reformer in their ordinary world, in their status quo, is following the rules, and the artists don't follow the rules. So when the reformer goes to the artist beat and acts out as an artist, very often this will be an atypical reformer behavior of acting outside the rules or being creative in some way. So that kind of beat. And then the other thing to notice is the other line coming from the adventurer to the reformer. Those are also opposites in a different way, because the adventurer also doesn't follow the rules and is very, sort of licentious in a lot of ways, but also playful. And so the reformer can learn a lot from the adventurer. And we call, when a reformer goes straight to an adventurer, that happens when the reformer is secure or relaxed. That's their area of growth. But in a story, what we're doing, we're stressing them again and again and again and again, and they can go to the adventurer and pick up some of those traits and act out as an adventurer after a series of negative stresses, and it's there that they will make a moral choice and either change for the better or the worse, if they're a hero or a villain. Okay, so that is the pattern. So the reformer is gonna go from type 1 reformer to a type 4 artist, to a type 2 helper, to a type 8 leader, to a type 5 observer, to a type 7 adventurer, and then back to a type 1 reformer at a higher moral level in this story. So obviously there's going to be a lot of ways of doing this in a story, and every story will handle this differently, and this is where the art comes in. The patterns are there to help us. These writers, I'm pretty sure we're not using the Enneagram consciously, but we're probably modeling earlier stories that worked and earlier scenes and beats that worked, or just their sense of this seems to be right, the right kind of scene here. But we'll see that this pattern is something that occurs over and over again. So let's see how it works in Witness. John Book's, let's talk about the moral arc of John Book. His character arc is from lower morality to higher morality. He's going to go from holier than thou to righteous man. He's going to go from institutional authority to moral authority. Okay, so those are the ideas that we're going to track. See the beginning and end of those. Now, but first, his core character type, the personality he normally displays on a day-to-day basis. We must establish this for the audience. Who is John Book? And that's where we get our first 15 minutes or so, our first mini-movie, maybe our first act, but usually the first 10 or 15 minutes. Let's see the character in his normal world and how he normally is. So how do the screenwriters achieve this? So we have an incorruptible cop. At the beginning of the story, John Book is a good cop surrounded by bad cops. He doesn't know it yet. He doesn't yet know of the widespread corruption in his precinct. But when Samuel, a young Amish boy, witnesses a murder, John Book investigates. So now we have a new character, an Amish boy named Samuel, who witnesses a murder. John Book is brought in to investigate. Now this is John Book's normal world. There's nothing out of the ordinary about this. This is his job. This is what he does. Now Samuel saw an African American man do the killing. This was a scene in the bathroom early, opens the movie just about. So John takes Rachel and Samuel to a bar, to a nightclub, in a predominantly black neighborhood, and drags a black suspect out into the street and kind of manhandles this black suspect the way that many white cops treat black suspects. And so we see that John Book's a little bit rough to this particular character. Now the kid in the car shakes his head no, so it's not the right guy, and then John Book lets the suspect go with kind of a half-hearted apology. So we see this is the way that John Book is trying to solve the problem. He's dragging the usual suspects. The witness says it was a black guy who killed him. Well, I'm going to go round up the black guys in the neighborhood who might be culpable. So John lets the man go with a half-hearted apology, and we immediately see that John Book is comfortable using violence to solve his problem, so long as it is in the service of justice. So he's willing to use violence in the service of justice. He's willing to push people around. He's willing to use that badge, that position of institutional authority, to push people around and solve the problem. So now the boy and his mother, Rachel, were on their way. They're actually on their way to Baltimore. They weren't staying in Philadelphia. But John needs them to remain in Philadelphia for the investigation. So he arranges for the Amish travelers to stay the night at his sister's place. And his sister is Elaine. She has an apartment in town. This is where we get our best insight into who John Book normally is, and can easily identify his core personality as a type 1 reformer. And this is actually helpful for screenwriters. It's good to have a character who knows the protagonist very well. Give us a hint about who the protagonist is, because we need to establish this very quickly, and it's always good to do this in conflict. So put your protagonist in conflict with somebody who knows them well, who can accuse them of being the exact person they are, so we, the audience, can listen in and find out quite quickly who this person is. So John demonstrates his type 1 judgmental side when he criticizes his sister's life choices. He says to her, you've got a man in the house and the kids are upstairs, question mark. So Elaine is a single mother with the kids, and she has been dating and allowing these strange men to sleep over, and John doesn't think that's appropriate with the kids in the house. And maybe he doesn't think it's appropriate that his sister is sleeping around at all, but who knows. He accuses her he says, you've got a man in the house and the kids are upstairs, question mark. So very accusing tone and very judgmental kind of attitude towards his sister. You get the sense that this is an old argument they've been having. And his sister snaps back and she says, that's none of your business. So keep your holier-than-thou mouth shut, says his sister. So his sister is telling John and telling the audience that John Book is holier than thou, which is a key trait for a reformer. Holier than thou, very self-righteous. So she basically nails it on the head. He's holier than thou, and that's a big clue to us that he's a type 1 reformer. And if you are writing a character and you want to be very clear about what's going on with this character, you can have another character accuse them of being who they are. And this is how these writers do it in this Oscar-winning screenplay. So lessons to learn there. Now this is a great lesson on how to establish a main character's personality in his ordinary world. And so what did they do to let the audience know he was a type 1? She states it basically very bluntly. She basically accuses him, and one of the characters knows the protagonist. This line of dialogue is put in the mouth of a character who knows the protagonist best, his sister, right? They've known each other since they were kids, and she has known him in all kinds of situations. She's got his number, and she's going to use it. And it's in a scene of conflict, right? It's a very brief scene, but they're arguing. It's an old fight, and we get to eavesdrop on it. Great way to get some exposition out that John is holier than thou. Okay, so arguments, you might want to use those especially if you're going to use on-the-nose dialogue, like calling somebody holier than thou. You can get away with on-the-nose dialogue if it's in a fight, and if it comes from somebody where it makes sense, and if it comes as an accusation, we'll go ahead and buy that as an audience, because it's really when we're fighting that the unspoken truths get spoken, and sometimes even shouted. Okay, so now we get a situation where John finds out that the person who committed the murder, or is responsible for the murder, is actually in the precinct, and there's a bad cop, and he needs to get out of Dodge. So he needs to protect the witnesses, and he takes them back to the Amish country to hide them. And this will be the way of keeping them alive. Basically, there's a scene where John is shot at early in the movie, and in getting shot at by another cop, a dirty cop, when John's just trying to do his job, is a very stressful thing, and he's put in a position where he must run away because there's no good place for him to turn, and he needs to figure this out. So he is going to go into hiding, and so when under stress, we saw that the reformer goes to an artist. So what's this going to mean? Well, he's going to need to blend in, and he's going to need a disguise. So in this case, the emotional beat is, he's been wounded. He's been injured and nearly killed. So he has, whatever's going on inside of his heart and his head, he's feeling these negative emotions. Not all of that comes out because he's a fairly stoic individual, but we can probably assume that he is licking his wounds here and trying to figure this out. And but he does need to disguise, and his city's clothes are bloody, and so he's in the Amish country. And Rachel, who's the mother of Samuel, gives him Amish clothes of her deceased husband. So I didn't say this before. She's a widow, recently widowed. So the beat for the artist type in this case is hiding, and putting on a disguise, pretending to be somebody else. And this is often a case, when a character goes into disguise. If you're not going to do the melancholy self-loathing of the artist, or some kind of creative, there's kind of a creative thing that has to happen here, and he's doing that by putting on a costume and pretending to be an Amish person. So the next stress would be, he actually goes in Amish clothes. He goes and tries to call. He goes into town and tries to call, and he's basically told by his the one person he can trust in the department, you got to lay low. You can't come back. Stay where you are. Keep hiding. Which is stressful for him because he's not getting the case solved. He's not figuring this out. And then the next beat for him, once he kind of heals, takes a moment to heal. The helper character is his next go-to on his arc. So how does he act as a helper? Well, he begins to help out on the farm. He begins to help out in the Amish community. And we first see this, it's Samuel that is reaching out to him. There's a scene that's setting up the silo for the end of the film. But there's a scene with petting a cat. Samuel and John pet a cat that they find. And then we see John is asked to milk the cow. So they play this for some comedy, but what we're seeing is that John is beginning to help out. He's milking cows. He's a city boy and pretending to be a country bumpkin, but he doesn't really know what's going on the farm, and so forth. So that's the move to the helper. So after the helper, what's going to happen is he's going to move next to the Type 8 leader. So you notice that these movements tend to be in opposites. So the helper is kind of non-confrontational. The leader is confrontational, so that confrontation is going to come out. The helper is somewhat passive and getting along. The leader is angry and confrontational. The helper, is not really take charge, but the leader is. So for a character like John Book, this is going to probably be where he maybe strikes out with violence. He is a violent man in a peaceful world. So in addition to the helping, I should mention there's the barn raising scene and a famous scene in there. So lots of helping out on the farm, and there's a whole sequence where he is sort of integrating himself and becoming helpful around the farm, and kind of changing and adapting and seeing a different way of living, and also falling for the girl, for Rachel, the mother of the son. So that's the helping beat. I think that actually goes for a mini movie or two, at least a mini movie, pretty much the working on the farm mini movie. And so then he acts out as a leader. Now, how does he do this? Well, what happens is he starts fighting back. He is a violent man, and he's really only pretending to be a pacifist. So there's a scene where he goes back into town, and some bullies in town who are used to picking on the Amish and making fun of them and teasing them, they do what they normally do, and they make fun of the Amish. But the bullies don't realize that one of the Amish men is not actually Amish. He's actually a cop, pretending to be Amish. And so the bullies, there's a scene with an ice cream cone, and they're putting melted ice cream on one of the Amish guy's face, and John fights back, and he protects. He's acting as a good leader here, a good very positive leader, although it's inappropriate for the circumstance because he's supposed to be hiding. He's supposed to be not drawing attention to himself, but we see he's acting out of his gut, his instinct as a protector, when he fights the bullies and protects the other Amish people, which is very un-Amish-like behavior, and will certainly give him away. There's somebody who's pretending to be Amish who's not Amish, and the cops are going to hear about that. So that's his type 8 beat, acting violently, protecting, acting out of gut instinct. He's still a reformer type. He's still acting out of right and wrong, and he's really doing it because it's the right thing to do from a moral standpoint, not a practical standpoint, because he's supposed to be hiding. But he's acting out of his gut. So these 8 character types, these type 8 character traits are coming out in that beat. So where does the 8 go? Well, now he needs to go into hiding again. So the observer beat is often a beat of being reclusive. This is he's basically brought the cops into the Amish territory. He's given them away. He's given away his where he is, and so there is he actually literally hides. He hides in a grain silo, and there's a scene where he's hiding in the grain silo, observing. He has no weapon. He does not have his gun. He does not have his bullets. They've been put away because this is a non-violent place, and his weapons don't belong there. So he's trapped. So this scene of him being trapped, hiding in the grain silo, observing as cops with guns are looking for him and looking for Samuel, trying to kill Samuel and possibly kill John Book as well. And the other thing that happens, so he lands at the negative side. He's a little bit nervous and scared of the outside world. In this case, the people who are hunting him, and that's sort of an observer quality of not wanting to face what's out in the world. In this case, he really doesn't have the weapons to do it. But an observer is a thinking, planning type, and he thinks his way out of this problem. And how does he do that? Well, he comes up with a plan. We sort of see with some cuts what his idea is, although we may not figure it out until we see it in action. But he ends up defeating one of the bad guys by opening the grain silo and allowing grain to fall on one of the bad guys with a gun, and basically smothering, drowning him in grain, cutting off his air supply. And this actually gets him a gun because the guy dies. It is a violent beat, but he's also using the tools around him. And it's also worth noting that his understanding of farm equipment comes out of his having helped around the farm. So now he understands the world enough to use the world as a weapon. So he's able to use the grain silo, pour grain onto one of the bad guys, bad cops, and kill the bad cop, smothering him with grain, and then digging out the gun. So now he has a weapon. So that now that he has a weapon, he can come out of hiding, and now this is where he moves from a 5 to a 7. So 7's one of the key aspects of moving from 5 to 7 is going into the outside world, becoming more extroverted and taking a risk. So this risk-taking thing that he does when he steps out of hiding, even though he's got a gun, he is he's outmanned even now. And so he comes out and he shoots the bad guy. He shoots McPhee. So violence is his solution here. And then but then there is a test at the end where he the other bad guy, his best friend, I think former partner, has the drop on him, and John Book, it looks like, is in trouble. But now he has moral authority, and instead of using violence, he uses his newfound moral authority to earn the victory against the most corrupt of the cops, because the guy that he shot, the black guy, played by Danny Glover, although he's the murderer, he's really not the most corrupt in the police precinct. It's really his former partner who's in a position of authority. And so it's the last test of wills is between the institutional authority of the bad cop and the moral authority of John Book. And so that's when we see John Book's choice to stand and with the community, with the Amish, and basically he shames the cop. He shames he doesn't use violence against him. He doesn't kill him. He arrests him. He certainly at one point there has the opportunity to kill the guy, but there are all these witnesses, so nobody's killing anybody at this point, and so the last beat is a pacifist one, and the solution is bearing witness to the crime, and so the ringleader of the bad cops does get arrested at the end. So the main things I wanted to point out about Witness, it is a really good movie, worth watching. Perhaps a couple times. I've seen it a few times, and once recently. Is it's got a great screenplay. It establishes the character of John Book pretty clearly, who he is, and it goes through these arcs. You can see how he's changing, and you can see, especially because he's a violent man in a non-violent world, and because he's moving between two worlds, that gives us a very clear idea of how he's changing. So this is a good one to study to see how the screenwriters managed to do this. And again, an Oscar-winning screenplay, a very popular movie, now considered, I believe, a classic. I think most people would agree. It's high up there on certainly on Harrison Ford's list of movies. It's a favorite of a lot of people. It's a movie that will probably endure for a number of reasons, and it's a good study in screenwriting and character development and character change, and it really is a chance to put a reformer character through his paces and see him adopt a non-violent solution in the final beat, at least. Although he does kill a couple of people before he gets to the non-violent end with his former partner. Okay, so that is a case study with Witness, the character secrets in Witness. Hope you get something out of that. I would take these notes that you've made, or these slides, or rewatch the video, and then go see the movie and see how that works, and see what you get out of it. You may get something different, but this is I think pretty clear pattern of a character, a clear character and a clear character arc, and a clear moral question that gets resolved. Okay, thank you.